Excuse me, sir. You there? Would you like to game? Then game we shall.
Hey guys, what is going on? It's Mikey Mads, and I'm here with Hyperion today. Say hello.
Hey guys.
Um,
Hey everybody.
so we are going to be discussing and talking about some of the things we think that are good, some of the things we don't like as much about the changes that were announced in Blizzcon 2014 and on 212, and we're hoping to possibly address some issues that we feel like are currently in the game, and talk about the great things that Blizzard's doing as well with the changes coming out. So hopefully we can get some data collected and put together, and we want to hear your opinions as well in the comments below, and hopefully we'll be able to maybe get this information to Blizzard at some point and hopefully make some positive changes. First thing I'd like to talk about is they mentioned not nerfing things that are really good in the game right now currently, and more so trying to work on buffing things up to par with the things that are great. And that goes with characters, that goes with pylons and greater rifts, that goes with the maps, monster density, all that sort. So I'm gonna let Alex give me some input on that and see what he thinks.
With like set, they also mentioned like set items. Like they briefly. I know that's been a big issue. The Marauder set is so overpowered, is what everybody says, and they talked about the Marauder set specifically, saying that they don't want to like nerf the Marauder set. They'd rather buff the other sets up to par.
Right.
And they've talked about that's kind of been a recent philosophy change for them.
Yeah, and I honestly, I think that's a great philosophy change. I think Blizzard is looking in the right direction on this. I think it's a very positive way to look at it. I main Witch Doctor, and even when the Demon Hunters got the buffs they did, even when they made Taskers work, with the sentries, I wasn't even mad. I know Witch Doctors for a while were really superior and pretty supreme, but it doesn't upset me when another class, becomes a little bit better and or gets, on the same level of comparison when it comes to clearing content and completion. So I am glad they didn't nerf the Demon Hunter, even though it's not my main. I think it's a good thing. So I guess we're kind of going to the Greater Rift pylon changes in the map and monster density changes. So those clearly to me are positive change, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think they mentioned that they're looking into the greater rifts and trying to make some of the changes for that, and they mentioned that they're going to be trying to change the monster density in the greater rifts, so that you've got in each greater rift it doesn't depend, so it's not so RNG dependent on what map you get or what type of monsters you get, so that no matter what rift you open, you have a fair chance of beating it.
Yeah. And I understand their idea behind the RNG and the randomness of, items and greater rifts, things like that. Their idea was to create replayability and to create the idea of, okay, well, I want to go again and, try to see what I can do. And they weren't really trying to base everything off randomness like they've mentioned many times before. They more so were trying to push people to, keep going and see what they could do with what was given to them. So some of the cons to this is going to be things that kind of weren't addressed, is the unavoidable fatal damage, damage scaling from the monsters based off difficulty, and also they've been talking about releasing new maps and new monsters. So I'm going to let Alex kind of give his input on what he thinks about some of this.
Yeah, for us, we're running the higher greater rifts, making it up into the high 40s and 50s. And one thing that you start encountering probably at around Greater Rift 38 and up is certain things like Thunderstorm, Frozen Pulse, or some of this stuff like that it's unavoidable. Jailer is a huge one.
Yeah. There's
absolutely no way of seeing it coming. Like the mortars, they hit hard, but you'll actually see the ground effect of where they're going to land, and you've got a chance to move. Mm-hmm. Whereas Jailer, it just procs, and it'll one-shot you.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way to react to it. And they didn't address that at all, which is something that we'd like to see changed, or at least mentioned.
I know that they have some new legendary gems in mind, which we consider a good change. That one gem that's going to take 95% less damage from all element types when you're at half health. I think that's a good change. I think that's a good gem, and I think it's great for a tank. I just don't know how well that's going to play a factor or role in a DPS. It's like we were talking about before. If it doesn't have like a diminishing return, or if it actually truly does make you take 95% less damage, I might actually see that being a really good gem. As of right now, we don't know. Mechanically, we don't know how that's going to work, and we know it's all still subject to change, but for a DPS, I still feel like it's probably not going to be enough. So what do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, I think I've played a support monk that has just inherently up to 80% damage reduction, and then on top of that, I have 50 million toughness. And if something even touches me in a Greater Rift, I'll just drop dead.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an insane amount of damage reduction that I've got, and I just get one-shotted by even trash mobs that hit you.
Yeah, and same thing with my ZDPS Witch Doctor. Unless I'm just playing exactly right and locking everything down like I should, I usually get one shot.
Yeah, that's something that we kind of wanted to briefly mention is damage scaling. It'd be nice to see maybe a reduction on that. To where at a certain point you're just getting one-shotted without having any chances is really tough on melee classes. Mm-hmm. If you're playing a barbarian or a monk or a crusader where you're trying to actually attack mobs, you're not playing a ranged class. If something just touches you, you drop dead. That's really rough.
And that's that's kind of the issue with that, is just you have all the in-game gear and you feel really powerful, and I don't think DPS should be able to take a ton of hits. However, completely unavoidable one-shotting it's really hard to manage and deal with. So some ideas that I've mentioned before would possibly be, if you stack a certain type of element damage, you have a high resistance to that. You take way less damage from it. So if you're like a cold demon hunter, you take way less cold damage. So, at least cancels out or fades out one of those deadly threats that can kind of make it a little more possible for you to progress and move forward. So we're moving on to the next topic, which is going to be treasure goblins, and we feel like that these new treasure goblins are actually a pretty good change in my opinion, and I believe it creates creativity within the game, and it creates that better loot hunt feel. So if you're targeting a specific type of goblin, I think it's just going to make the encounters more exciting. So what do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, they announced that they're going to get rid of the old treasure goblin, and they're coming out with goblins, 3 different types. One is going to drop gems, one is going to drop crafting materials, and one is going to drop blood shards. I think that's a really fantastic idea. So if you're low on your crafting materials, you can hunt for those crafting mat goblins. If you want to get some extra blood shards and not have to do rifts for that, you can take out those blood shard goblins. I think it's a really positive change.
Yeah, I do too. And actually, while doing bounties, encountering blood shard goblin will kind of make that worth it and kind of counteract T6 rifts, I think, being the main source of blood shards. So I think that's a really good positive change. Some of the cons to this is, and it's not a major one, so by any means, like I said, we think this is awesome that Blizzard's doing these things. It's not a huge con, but one of the minor cons to that is we feel that it would be nice to have a specific legendary drop goblin, and that would be obviously like the Star Metal Kukri, like Lacuni Prowlers, just things that are like really hard to find. So we feel that obviously the encounter wouldn't be really super common, but I feel like the game would be boosted more in the direction of that loot hunt feel if there was ways to kind of specifically target or kind of specifically aim for things that are, as of right now, just it's random. If you get it, you get it. So what do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, like, for example, like the Star Metal Kukri, I've talked to some people who have farmed over 500 hours on their witch doctors and haven't found one.
Yeah.
And you can gamble for 90% of the items from Kadala, but you can't target ceremonial knives or something.
Right, exactly.
And especially at the prices, I think it's 100 blood shards for a single one-handed weapon. That's a lot. And especially if you can't target a ceremonial knife, then it's really starting to become not worth it anymore.
Right.
And so if they had a goblin that would give you a higher chance of dropping a legendary or a super rare legendary, it'd be great, especially if they're removing the typical treasure goblin, which just would drop random loot.
And you could even do something cool, and this is kind of off topic, make it to where like he's mini and you fight him and you kill him, he revives, comes back into Goblin Brute, and is actually like a little mini boss fight, and he's a little harder than normal simply because you have better odds of legendary. So it'd be cool if they could do something like that. Itemization and legendary ancient legendaries. So we have kind of discussed this a bit. We think it's a good idea. It's nice to give those in-game players, anybody who's looking to advance and become better at all times, I think it's a great idea that they have better legendary versions of what we already have. However, the con to that is, what's the % chance that we're even going to find those? They kind of vaguely went over that, and how rare the drop's going to be, and are you going to have to completely regear even to compete or keep up with anybody else. So, what do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, I've been looking on the forums and I've seen a lot of heated debates about it. I see both sides. I think, yeah, it's great. I pretty much on a lot of my characters, there's nothing else I can really upgrade. I've got pretty much perfect gear. And so adding the ancient items gives me something else to hunt for. And now I've got a chance to upgrade my gear again. The downside is if you're going to be wanting to play with, end game players, people at your level, that's going to make it now so that in order to do the higher greater rifts with people, you're going to have to completely re-gear. You're going to have to find all your new gear items, which is, I can see people not liking that idea. If you've already gotten to the end game and you're like, yes, I've got my full Marauders Demon Hunter. I'm really having fun, wrecking stuff in the game. But okay, now I've got to completely re-find all my gear.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, sorry, something to kind of reiterate is about the goblins. We are aware that they did mention that the goblins aren't finalized, and there's possibly more going to be introduced. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
They did. They said that they might be coming up with more, so we'll see. But anyways, that's kind of my thoughts. I see both sides to that argument on the ancient items. Overall, though, I'm kind of going to be excited to see how they are. But for example, again, like the Star Meta Kukri, it's incredibly hard to find.
Yeah.
How hard is it going to be to find a ancient Star Meta Kukri or a Furnace or Tasker and Theos or something,
Yep.
But we'll just have to see when the.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like we said, we're talking about all this. It's not finalized, so we're just mentioning these concerns and hopefully.
That's something to keep in mind. Is at Blizzard, at BlizzCon, they mentioned this directly. Is all this stuff is still going to be going to PTR, and that's kind of why we wanted to make the video, is to see if we can address some of these issues before it comes finalized, and maybe pass it on to Blizzard or something.
Okay. Yep, and that would be awesome if we could. So moving on to the new sets that are coming out, they have announced a couple new sets that look really good. They're going to be revamping gear. They stated that old gear that I think Blizzard is on track. I really do. I mean, I felt really pumped and felt really excited about some of the stuff they were talking about. One of those was old gear not doing anything special at all, and they want to really change that and revamp it. And also, they're going to be introducing new legendaries, which some of them we saw, some we did not. We just saw pictures, so that's going to be good as well. So, what's your thoughts on that, Alex, on the new sets and new legendaries?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a change in the right direction. There's so many legendaries out there that you find that just have absolutely no. It's just pretty much a glorified rare, and they said that they're going to try and make it so that every single legendary has a legendary affix. Like, for example, the Skullgrass ring. It drops right now. It's junk. You see it. It's pretty much an auto salvage. Now they're making changes to where that Skullgrass is going to be barbarian specific, and it'll roll and it'll increase your whirlwind damage by up to 400%.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do that with all the legendaries, so that's going to make pretty much every legendary now possibly worth using.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this whole item section was about, is we were discussing, and it's like, when it comes to legendary items, I know it's not easy to balance. I mean, there's so many balancing within balancing in this game, and I get that, but you have to try to make other options more appealing and look really attractive. So he has the Skullgrass ring, which he mentioned, which I think is going to be great for Whirlwind Barbs, and I think that's a good premises and basis for Blizzard to start off at, is let's try to get everybody able to farm T6 efficiently. Let's start off there first, because the comparison between Greater Rift and T6 is miles apart. It's totally different. And but if you can at least get a build that's just like really, really good at farming and not super hard to gear out and get, it'll allow you to get the stuff that you need to do Greater Rifts if that's what you're looking to do. So we have as well the Belt of the Trove, which is another good example. It's not a witching hour. However, every 6 seconds it has a chance to call down a bombardment on a random monster in the area. In conjunction with the weapon, I think it allows you to cast like 2 bombardments at that location or something like that.
Yeah, just a quick note, this is a Crusader-specific belt.
Yeah. So, there's that belt, in my opinion, looks like it's going to be pretty useful, possibly, and appealing, and the reason that is simply because most Crusaders don't even run Witching Hour to begin with. Usually they run Cooldown or the Crimson Belt or something like that. So, the con side of that, and something that we want to address, is the Omrin's Chain. It's a Demon Hunter specific belt, and more or less every time you vault it drops a Cultra. And you know, I like them trying to create different ideas, and I'm not bashing it at all. But the problem with it is that if you're in a Greater Rift or if you're farming, there's really not going to be any situation where dropping extra call traps is really going to boost your damage or really help you at all anyway to begin with. Especially with the M6 setup, you're going to be moving constantly, you're going to be staying out of harm's way and letting your sentries do most of the damage. So this is just kind of a comparison as to like what looks really good and what needs to be worked on, in my opinion. So
yeah, with like something, you know, the main thing with that is you want to, if they're coming out with new legendaries, I think it needs to be compared to existing legendaries. So with that new Demon Hunter belt, you compare that to the Witching Hour, which every Demon Hunter is using right now. It's falling miles behind the Witching Hour.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any Demon Hunter wanting to use that belt over Witching Hour.
Yeah, I mean, it's 50% critical hit damage and attack speed, which are two of the most important things right now that help you boost your damage so much. And attack speed helps you hit your breakpoints, which are really important. Now, if this belt did something like it boosts sentry damage by 25% and on Vault has a chance to drop Call Trap or a sentry, you know, I might see that being a little more viable. It might be a little more appealing and attractive. But as of right now, as is, I think it needs to be worked on a little bit. So, but as of right now, guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and we're going to go ahead and start recording for a part 2 section, and I'll post both of them together. So stay tuned.